Okay, sweet Stacy. I'm excited to hear what's on your heart and mind today. Let's just let it
Okay.
unfold and see where we go.
Yep. Last week, I think it was in the workbook class, there it came up this idea of you spot it, you got it.
Right.
And whenever that comes up in conversation, I there's just something about me that says, "Ooh, I just don't know. I don't know what that's all about." And I thought and thought about it. And what came to me when I got quiet about it was this realization. And I certainly have been here before, but this time I just grokked it, like understood it in my DNA that when I'm judging, I'm withholding love. Judging and, worrying is judging, all of these emotions. Basically, they're judging. What I'm saying is, this isn't right. I don't want this to be this way. I'm judging this to be wrong. That is the act of withholding my love. So I sat with that for a few days. On Monday, I had a phone call, a conversation with Joe, and I had shared this meme that came up on Instagram um, about the you spot it, you got it. If the world irritates you, it's a mirror, not an enemy. Does it bother you when people ignore you? You ignore yourself. Do controlling people annoy you? You try to control everything. Does criticism hurt you? You punish yourself in silence. Do you feel betrayed? Who betrayed you first? And when I hear things like this, immediately what comes up are my defenses and just sort of this despair of like, oh, great. Well, there's more to add to my decade long list of what's wrong with me, what I don't understand, because I have such a hard time seeing these things in myself. It's like, well, that's just more proof how broken I am. And what Joe offered was so it started with on my Sunday Zoom call with my untethered soul sisters. All behavior is a call for love. Hmm, that's interesting. And then what Joe offered is God is the outlet. We want to plug in and connect. When we unplug, that's when ego takes over. He said, does it matter what happened or why? What matters is to plug back in. And I thought, and immediately I thought, oh, I need to talk to Brittany about this because when, that annoying person is just going on and on and on and on about stuff I could care less about, and my brain is just starting to think these, maybe that's not okay. Here's a signal that there's something really wrong with you and you need to go figure this out and correct it, which is where the path I always go down. Maybe it's just a signal. Oh, look at that girl. You did it again. You unplugged. Mm. Plug yourself back in to the source. Yeah. Mm. So I have taken that notion with me throughout the rest of this week. So I walk into the kitchen and the cupboard doors open and the doors open and the junk on the counter. I just like plug in, just plug in. Because what the hell? I mean, first of all, it doesn't matter. Second of all, I have a choice how I want to respond to this. I'm not responding to this negatively because of things that happened in my childhood. Screw that. I don't need to psychoanalyze myself anymore. Right. I just need to plug back in. So that's where I'm at. And I am, because it's all of our basic MO is to bypass the hard stuff. What I want to know today is, so is that just spiritually bypassing? Do I really need to jump down every single rabbit hole and figure out every single thing that's wrong with me that these people are showing me? Is that why God put them in front of me to show me how wrong and broken I am? Or just to say, girl, plug back in. There's another way to look at this.
I love this question so much. And I love this conversation so much because it really treads on the line of correct perception of an idea of like you spot it, you got it, and an incorrect perception of what it means when you spot it, you got it. And I believe that the majority from what I've seen, like I know the post you're talking about. I think you shared it with me because I went and read it after. And so I seen that as the narrative in our community for a very long time, that they use this analogy that if you see it in the world, you must have it,
Mhm.
right? Or if you don't like what you see in the world, you must have it in yourself. And so I've really had to like grapple with that too, because that's always been not congruent with what Jesus is teaching me. So I've always been like, okay, well, why is it that this is such a big narrative in our community when I sit with the book and I sit with Jesus and I sit with other people and I sit with my own triggers, that's not the case. And so I've had to like try and unwind and really step back and look at it. So I've done a lot of looking at this. So I'm going to kind of share from a bit of what I've done. But what I've realized is I want to show you the incorrect way and then I want to show you the correct way so that we can choose. Okay. Because it's really helpful, I think, to see both. So I think the first narrative of you spot it, you got it is trying to come from that idea that you are responsible for what you see. I mean, we just went through this in the textbook a couple weeks ago, right? You're responsible for what you see, you're responsible for what you think, you're responsible for what you feel. But I feel that where the disconnect is with that you spot it, you got it, is that what we're learning in A Course in Miracles is to discern the difference between an illusion as an illusion and truth as truth. And so there is this space where we can observe the world and we can start to recognize illusions as illusions and truth as truth. And just because we're spotting them both doesn't mean that we are caught in the illusion because we see it as an illusion. It means that we have a choice for the meaning that we put on that illusion. And so, right, we're responsible for the meaning that we put on it. And so the example that I like to give was the example that Jesus gave me of when he was here. Okay. And the example that he showed me, and I'm like, I need help grappling with this so I can help people grapple with it. And then here you are. But what he showed me is that, do you know in the Bible when Jesus has this story of him being with Matthew and the tax collectors and the sinners and they're having dinner together? And then the Pharisees come up and they first address the disciples and they're like, why is your pastor, your Messiah, communing and connecting with all of the sinners, right? And then Jesus's response was, well, I'm not here for the healthy, I'm here for the sick. Right? So I'm going to be here to love my brothers where they are and help them to remember who they are, and we're going to heal through miracles together. And then the more that the Pharisees started to communicate with Jesus, the more upset they're getting, the more angry they're getting, the more hostile, the more judgmental. And I don't remember the exact words that Jesus used, and maybe we can look this up after, but it was something to the effect of, I don't think it was in this moment, but something to the effect of, you know, you Pharisees are not seeing brothers or myself correctly at all. You need to go seek for truth and figure out what it is because right now you're incorrect. And so Jesus would speak to the Pharisees like, I do not support how you see brothers. I do not support how you see the world. This is not helpful. This is not loving. This is not okay. No, thank you. Drawing the line in the sand. No, thank you. Jesus was saying that's illusion, and we are learning not to think with the thoughts of fear. We're not to think with the thoughts of judgment. We're not to think with the thoughts of separation or difference. We're to think with the thoughts of love. So Jesus wasn't like, oh, all is love. Everything is fine. Pharisees, you have no problem. You have no issue. Everything is good. He's like, no, you are currently choosing not to think with the thoughts of God. And therefore, you are receiving the effects of lacks of love and you're projecting it on everyone else. And that is not okay. That's not okay.
Mhm.
So Jesus drew the line between what is okay and what is not okay because he knew the difference between truth and illusion. And he held that line throughout his entire ministry until the end where he could demonstrate, look at all the projections I'm taking on. I'm not going to get angry at them. I'm not going to hate them. The Pharisees can come eat dinner with us if they want. But that's a choice that you need to make. I'm not responsible for your choice. You're responsible for your choice. And so I think where Course in Miracles people get stuck is they think that we are responsible for what other people choose and do when we're not. We're responsible for what we think, choose, and do. Doesn't mean I'm not going to recognize illusion as illusion because I can. But Jesus says we're learning to recognize illusion as illusion and see beyond it to the truth. That's the training. So Jesus didn't say, oh, there's no Pharisees here. They don't exist. They're not happening. They're not spreading lies. No. Yeah, you are. And that's not the truth. But here's the truth. Let me give it to you and include you in this truth because I love you. I see you as a child of God beyond your mistakes. So I feel like that's what we're learning to do. It's not that you spot it, you got it. It's that what is real for you? That's the question. Are the illusions that you see that this person is enacting or saying real to you? Or is the child of God real to you? And you will know if you can keep that loving, open heart without judgment, without condemnation, without blame, without hatred, all of that stuff. And later on in the story with Jesus, when he's preparing himself to go to the cross and Peter is with him, Peter, because he's trying to defend his master that he loves and that he doesn't want to die, cuts off the ear of a guard who's taking Jesus to the end of his life. And instead of Jesus going, yeah, whatever, he mended the ear of the brother and he turned to his disciple and he said, get behind me, Satan. Because he realized in that moment that his ego had come to the foreground and was trying to project on the guard here. And Jesus wasn't having any of it. So he wasn't saying, oh, that doesn't exist. That doesn't happen. Like, it's okay. Jesus didn't say, oh, this is my projection. I spotted. I got it. He drew the line in the sand. And he said, I'm not going to let you cross into illusion, my brother. You will 3 times before you change your mind and remember me. But like, I'm going to hold this line so that you remember I'm not condemning and blaming and cutting off his ear. Why are you? So you can still give love in those moments where people aren't loving, but you're not thinking that it's loving when it's not. Like when someone's coming from their unloving ego, it's coming from unloving ego. You don't have to fancy it with pretty spiritual language to make ourselves feel better. That's not what it's about. It's calling a spade a spade. Either you're in truth or you're not in truth. And that's just what it is. And we as a Christ-minded being are meant to know the difference and not confuse them. So that if my brother's not speaking in truth, I can speak to the truth in him. I can love him. I can call the soul out, right? I can demonstrate that love and that compassion no matter what's going on. That's what we're meant to do. And it will help call the soul out of them. But I'm not pretending that they're not in illusion right now. And just because I see that they're in illusion right now doesn't mean that I am. Right? We're learning to discern the difference. So honestly, people I feel are caught in the illusion when they're like, oh, it's just part of the dream. It's okay. It doesn't mean anything. It's like, well, no, thoughts have effects and are all contributing to the world we want to see. So yeah, it does matter. It matters. So that kind of leads into the correct way to see you spot it, you got it. At first, yes, everyone is going to be our mirror. And if we get super triggered by someone, we're pretty much guaranteed that we've got a trigger inside ourselves that we got to work on. But it is not our job to go around and like try and deep dive into our triggers or our subconscious. Our job is to plug into God, like Joe said to you, and to wake up every morning plugged into God, to go throughout the day plugged into God. And then if you have that bump where you get disconnected from God, like you saw when you walked into the kitchen, oh, let me choose love again. Let me choose God again. Let me re-plug in. And if we have a pattern that's repeating itself and not going away, that's when I would be like, all right, time to sit down with my journal and my course and my prayers and my Jesus, and let me look at this stuff because this is something that keeps repeating that it needs to be corrected in me, and I'm ready to forgive it and let it go. And that's where like radical responsibility comes in. But to me, like if my like, okay, so for example, where this you spot it, you got it thing can go really wrong is I was talking to someone else in our group for one of these hot seats, which is beautiful. So you'll see it come out soon. I'm not sure if that'll be a public one or not. So I'm going to share it kind of privately, but in a way that makes sense to what we're talking about. She had an experience when she was younger where her mother died. But she died in a way that made her think that it was her fault, even though it wasn't at all in any sense of the word at all. But when you're a young child, you kind of make those conclusions, right? Just like I know I did that when my parents divorced. It was like, oh my God, what did I do? Like, what did I do wrong? And I feel like that's the same thing that's happening with this. You spot it, you got it. It's a mischievous way for ego to make you feel guilty for things that you're not responsible for. Right. And I told her her mom chose that as part of her curriculum. That has nothing to do with you. You get to choose how you respond to it. But that's not your fault, babe. That's not your fault. You know, and like, and the healing and the opening and the tears that were able to come of like, oh my God, it's not my fault. That's part of the healing because it's not fault. It's not blame. It's not meant to make you feel guilty because you spot these things. Be sad, cry, like get upset, like feel like, oh my God, I can't believe my mom's gone. Like that's appropriate response to what happens in this world. Whereas the whole you spot it, you got it thing can a lot of the time tie into just focusing on the problem too much and trying to, okay, well, where do I got to heal my mind? And what do I got to trigger next? And well, where is my ego going? Whereas Jesus is saying, Look for the Son of God. Look for the innocence. Look for the proof that you're forgiven. Look for the proof that you've been freed and happy and made well. That's what you're to be looking for. And then when you look for that, you'll see it. And you will also have those triggers come up to show you where you're still blocking yourself from seeing.
Mhm. Mhm.
So it's what do you want? Like, what goal do we want? And focus on that. We don't have to be diving into everything else. That comes up organically and naturally.
Mm.
So that's a lot of talking and unfolding on you, Stacy. But I'm sure I can keep going. But like, what's coming up for you? How do you feel with the way that I broke it down like that? And does it bring some clarity to your question?
Yes, very much so. So the plugging back in, that's like step one,
Step one.
or noticing that I'm unplugged. That's step one.
Yeah.
Then plug back in. Then um, listen and discern. Is this a lesson for me? Or is this just a lesson in patience, right? In living life with other human beings. I mean, whatever,
100.
people do shit that that I don't like, but whatever. Um, yeah,
And we're not going to like everything that people do on this planet Earth.
right,
The majority of things that people do, we do not like as souls. It's
right,
not loving. It's,
right.
Martin Luther King drew the line in the sand. Like, it's not okay that you do not treat us as equals. It's
Mhm.
time that we get treated as equals. Like, you have to, Jesus is telling us to call it out in us so that we can see it and correct it. And so it will get called out when it needs to. But like, that's not the point. The point is exactly what you're saying. Is like maybe there's a different lesson here for me, like forgiveness or patience or holding that container or having extra empathy, or learning like generosity in this moment. Like there's different characteristics that we're meant to learn in situations versus just like, oh, it's my trauma of the past I'm projecting.
Right. Right. Yeah, I'm bothered because there's something wrong with me. But
Right.
maybe these same particular kinds of people show up in my life over and over and over because I just am not getting the lesson that I'm supposed to be getting. Because when I do get the lesson, then number one, that person suddenly becomes just sort of neutral, like, yeah, whatever. She's always late. I don't care.
Yep.
Or I they just drop out of my life.
Yep.
And no longer I no longer need to pursue that friendship because I get the lesson finally,
Indeed.
because I
Yeah,
finally got the lesson. Yes,
exactly.
right.
Exactly.
And maybe I am responding because of something that happened in my childhood. Well, then that's just a clue, not an indictment
Yes.
of me.
Exactly.
You're wrong because well, no, something happened in my childhood. It's still bothering me. Here it comes again. You need to take a look at this and finally work it out or let go of it or whatever.
Exactly. Greet it with
Yeah.
curiosity. Ooh, what's
Mhm.
this here to show me? It's not like, oh, I've done something wrong. It's like, ooh, that's curious. I can feel that rise of like frustration, anger. I can feel it. What's
Uh,
going on here? So it's like you kind of like peel it back like you're a curious detective versus like
mhm.
someone who's been persecuted.
Right. And do that while plugged in,
While plugged in.
because unplugged and holding that plug, then that's ego doing the work.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And that's where I feel like the spot it you got it thing gets stuck because now what? You're not allowed to look on the world and see the atrocities and be like, no, thank you. No, you like we have to be able to have our eyes open, be like, wow, there's atrocities, no thank you. But what am I going to focus on and what is true for me and what God would you have me do and how would you have me see this? And so he always puts my perspective of like, okay, this is happening for the greater awakening. Don't forget God's plan is what's going on. Salvation is at hand. Like, don't forget that you are his beloved son and you are here to demonstrate love in every single situation that you possibly can. Right. And be gentle with yourself because you're all learning and everything that is around you is currently here to help you and awaken you. And sometimes it has to like shake you a little bit if you're not paying attention. But it's more like it's gentle, it's graceful, it's easeful. To me, we're meant to be focusing on, oh my God, God, show me the proof of where you are everywhere. Like that's what it's about,
Mhm. Mhm.
And then if other things pop up that are not loving, then we can look on it plugged in and see it in a way that makes total sense. Total sense.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, for the greater awakening. So it's for my awakening, for the greater awakening. I'm not being shown these things once again to just show me how damaged I am.
It will be perpetual.
But
If we're
that's what
going
psychoanalysis is all about,
exactly.
right?
That's what we're not supposed to do. If we go, oh, what's in the ego to see all of my problems from childhood? It's never going to end. It's never going to end. It's exhausting and it's pressure and it's like my problems. She's like, you got one problem, one solution, sweetheart. Don't worry
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
Get yourself out of the muck of all these little itty bitty things. Let me
Mhm.
show you what your problem is.
Mhm.
Relax. It's so much more graceful than that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all a game of the ego to keep us small and separate.
Is. Yes,
Yeah.
and needed. I find a lot of people who like will speak those, you spot it, you got it. Well, if I'm always spotting all the insanity, because we're gonna spot it, it's
Right.
everywhere in this insane world, then I'm forever needing healing. And if I'm forever needing healing and it's never working, because in that context, did you spot it, you got it, it's not gonna work. You're directing yourself. You're gonna need external authority. And so
Mhm.
now it leads to the authority problem and then like idolatry. And it's like, I need my answer in this person. Maybe this person knows the answer more than me. And then it becomes this like outward seeking. Whereas what we're talking about is using your everyday moments to stay plugged into God. And anything else that you're meant to see or go deeper on, he will flag it and you will know it and you will sit in prayer and meditation and it will be released through his voice because that's the simplicity of forgiveness in God's plan.
Mhm.
Right. So it's like it's that like, yeah, if we look through God's eyes, he'll point everywhere. Oh, thank you so much for doing your work. You're so wonderful. Oh, thank you so much. You're amazing. Because he wants to confirm our greatness, our holiness to us. And so that's what
Mhm.
we want to look for.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay. Yeah, that's very helpful. I knew I was right on the cusp
Mm.
of something opening up because this is always just not quite right. That there's something wrong with that. You spot it, you got it.
Yeah.
Haven't been able to figure it out, but yeah, thank you.
You're so welcome.
Thank
I think
you.
the final thing I'm hearing before we say goodbye here today is that idea of asking ourselves, like being plugged in, like asking ourselves, like, what do I choose to be real about this person? And what kind of world do I want to see? Right. And just let our
Mhm.
mind and heart anchor onto that vision of the holiness of that person and anchor on to the holiness reflecting in the world and know that that is what is real to us. And then when the illusions pop up in our friends and the illusions pop up in the world, we can be like, okay, what would you have me do? What would you have me, how would you have me approach this? And then we're staying in the guidance and we're just doing what we're supposed to do, whether it's listening or it's holding space or it's offering a kind word or it's offering a shift in perception or, hey, read this book or, hey, look at this thing. Then we're going to be used as a miracle worker instead of it always being like, oh, this is reflecting my stuff. Do you understand how insane I would be with all the people's problems that I hear every day of my
Yeah.
life? Right? No, it's not mine. I don't have to take your stuff on as me. It's not me. It's not mine. Right. But I can help
Mhm.
you. And I can meet you where you are. I can love you beyond it all. And together we can lay it down as illusions because we know it's illusion.
Mhm.
Right.
Yep.
So,
Yes. Yes. So interesting. This won't surprise you at all. That really my next big step in my spiritual growth is to ask and listen.
babe.
Yeah. Instead of, oh, I know, I could just go buy another book. That will
Right.
that will help me figure it out what's wrong.
Right.
No, supposed to ask and listen. Oh, that is so hard for control freaks.
I know.
Right?
It is. It's the hardest, honestly. It takes the biggest training, but the most the most reward, like the payoff when we do it. Because even Jesus says, when you do the asking and receiving, when you do the asking and the listening, it's going to prove itself to you.
Mhm.
Right. And it
It
always
does
does.
every
Yeah.
time. Yeah. Does every
Every
time.
time.
But I'm just like, well, it worked that time. But will it work this time? I'm looking for loopholes.
Right. Right. Right.
Where couldn't possibly work this time. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Yep. I'm where I need to go. Thank you so
Amazing.
much.
You're so
Appreciate
welcome,
it. Love
Stacy.
you.
I love you too, honey. Thank you so much
Mm,
for sharing yourself with me and asking the important questions. I value you so much. I'm so grateful just for you. for doing the work and showing up and being in our space
Mhm.
together. I'm so grateful.
Well, thank you for being here for us.
Thank you, Stacy. Happy to be.
All right.
All right, honey. Have a beautiful day. I'll talk to
You
you soon.
too. Bye.
Bye.